they went into the weekend and reports emerged of them being one of many teams calling the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm sick as a dog and words are having a hard time coming out this morning, about Christian Kirk and a possible trade with the Jags for their top wide receiver. That ended 24 hours later when Christian Kirk broke his collarbone, is now out for the season, and the Pittsburgh Steelers lose yet another wide receiver option. But CBS insider Jonathan Jones floated a name to watch. And while he said it was very much so hypothetical, he did toss the Pittsburgh Steelers out there and use the Pittsburgh Steelers as the team in his hypothetical trade for Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson. He says it's a first-round pick, that you give up a first-round pick. And everybody will say, that's crazy. And I might agree with you, but we'll dive into that here in a second. What's not crazy is the Jets thinking that they should trade Garrett Wilson, because why not? You are 2-6. You just lost to the New England Patriots without Drake May. Let me say, without Drake May, Jacoby Brissett led a comeback victory over the Jets. Aaron Rodgers does not look the same. The wide receiver core does not look good at all. You don't have a head coach. Your defense is atrocious. It's just all around bad for the New York Jets. And you got to think they're at some point going to be looking to just sell house and move on to the next season and say the Aaron Rodgers experiment was a fail. We'll try again with the next one and see what happens. Garrett Wilson for a first-round pick. I'll ask you two parts here. One, would you do it? Because, I mean, you could say whatever you want. Garrett Wilson is worth a first-round pick. And there are some people that will say, you never trade a first-round pick for a guy. Why not trade a guy that was a first-round pick 2 years ago who's still clearly valued as a first-round pick and plays like a first-round pick and is young enough that you could make him a franchise wide receiver with George Pickens, and you already had plans to do that with Brandon Ayuk. Would you trade a first-round pick for a guy like Garrett Wilson? And do you think that possibility is something the Pittsburgh Steelers will think of if nothing else presents itself in the next week?
I'm wondering whether or not, or how much truth there is to the fact that the Jets are willing to trade him. Now, again, if they want a first-round pick back and they're noticing, all right, well, the Aaron Rodgers timeline didn't work, so we're going to be probably without a quarterback again when we're trying to restart this entire thing. Maybe they do want as many first-round picks as possible to get up in the, let's just say, opportunity next year for a Quinn Ewers, the opportunity next year for a Carson Beck or a Jalen Milroe. Maybe it makes a little bit of sense, but for the Steelers side of things, I think unequivocally, yes, I would do it if I was the Steelers, because I understand they're not without needs. They're not without holes on this roster, but this is one of the more complete teams that we've seen in the Mike Tomlin era. And they have told us via their moves, via the way that they speak, that they're trying to go for a Super Bowl right now.
Yes.
I understand that it would be nice to have that first round pick, and you don't trade a first round pick for anybody, but getting a guy who has had 2 1,000-yard seasons with checks notes 8 quarterbacks in the last 3 years, and he's well on pace to do that again, plus have a career high in touchdowns. I think it's worth it, especially, and again, this is a small factor in this, especially for a guy that has really good chemistry with Justin Fields already. So I would personally do it. Whether or not the Steelers would, it depends how desperate they are to be in win now mode, because I think we all agree of their holes, wide receiver is one of the biggest ones. And if you go out there and get Garrett Wilson, it's practically like you're spending next year's first rounder by just drafting a more mature Garrett Wilson.
I agree. If this was before the season, this is not a conversation to be had, or at least it goes in a different light. You're talking, well, you can't give up a first round pick because you don't know what the future holds for your quarterback position. You look at it and say, what if things don't work out this year? You're really going to put all your eggs in one basket and then lose or stink or not have a quarterback to rely on. But we're 8 weeks into the season. The Steelers, if they win tonight, are in sole possession of the AFC North. They sit at 6-2 heading into the bye week. They are clearly a wide receiver away from a great offense, and they have their quarterback. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. See all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. And for any that you don't want anymore, Rocket Money can help you cancel them with just a few taps. Rocket Money's dashboard gives you a clear view of your expenses across all accounts, easily creates a personalized budget with custom categories, to help keep your spending on track and sees your monthly spending trends in each category to know exactly where your money is going. Get alerts if your bills increase in price, there's unusual spending activity, or if you're close to going over your budget. And the new goals feature automatically saves money for you without you even having to think about it. Whether your goal is to pay off your credit card debt, put away money for a house, or just build your savings, Rocket Money makes it easy. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you, sometimes up to 20%. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save. Then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They'll deal with customer service. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. They could save members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. That's rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. They have their quarterback right now that they believe could win them a Super Bowl in Russell Wilson. And they believe that. Whether me and you believe that doesn't matter. Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, Art Rooney, and everybody in that locker room believes that they are a Super Bowl worthy team with Russell Wilson at the helm. And then next year, you now have two options because it worked out perfectly. You saw Justin Fields, and if you want to pay him, okay, cool, bring Justin Fields back. He's your starting quarterback. If you don't, if you think Russ Wilson's the guy, and Russ keeps saying, I mean, he said it the other day on the Rich Eisen show, he wants to play into his 40s. If he wants to play a couple more seasons and you want to sign him, I bet you he comes back for a cheaper deal. And then you have Russell Wilson. So they're not thinking quarterback. The Steelers aren't sitting around thinking we need a first-round pick for a quarterback next year. Why not use it to go make a trade? They've done this before, and sometimes it's worth it. I mean, Minkah Fitzpatrick was worth a first-round pick. And at the time, it was to save a season that they believed in, and they got just that. And this year, you don't need a Minkah. You need a Garrett Wilson. You need a star wide receiver to come in here and be a star wide receiver next to George Pickens. And is it the perfect fix? Probably not. Does it definitely boost your offense? 100%. And who knows what Garrett Wilson can do with a better quarterback? Because let's be honest, Russell Wilson in one game looked better than Aaron Rodgers has most of the season. And maybe that doesn't last, but maybe it does. And you look at it and say you have a better quarterback. I don't want to say a better running game, but a more consistent running game the last 2 weeks. And we'll see if that continues into 3 weeks here, and definitely a better defense. And you're on a winning football team. So it just feels like the atmosphere, the situation is plus. I mean, let's not ignore the fact that you have an offensive coordinator that like technically has a role, because I don't know what Nathaniel Hackett does if he doesn't call plays. He's just there because Aaron Rodgers likes him. And you have a head coach because the Jets don't have a head coach. So it's a much better situation. I think it'd be worth it for a first-round pick. He's probably the only name that I would say is worth it. And I don't know how serious the interest is, but I could say that the Jets are clearly in this is a dumpster fire, we're trying to fix it mode. And I don't know how soon. I mean, Woody Johnson has made it very clear he's willing to make sporadic moves. And what's stopping them from making another sporadic move? If this was nothing, if this was another team, that if this was the Jaguars, and Garrett Wilson was Christian Kirk, I think it's a different conversation. But the fact that it's the Jets, and the Jets are known to just do the goofiest of things at the goofiest of times. Yeah. I mean, why not? Why not make it work? I think Garrett Wilson for a first-round pick makes some sense for the Steelers. Will it happen? I don't know. But I do think it's a name to watch, especially because Schefter's reporting last week that teams are calling. I mean, that's not going to calm down after you lose to the Patriots. The Steelers aren't going to be like, yeah, well, they still have a shot. They're 2-6, but there's an opportunity there. No, they're going to call harder.
Yeah, the timeline on the Jets this year is crazy. You go 2-3, you fire your coach, you then lose 3, or in the midst of losing 3 in a row, you trade for a top receiver in Devontae Adams, and then potentially trade away your young top receiver in Garrett Wilson. I mean, that's when you start looking at organizational malpractice, but this is the team we're talking about here, is the New York Jets.
Exactly. So leave the light on. Do not shut it off. There are names, the Brandon Ayuk thing seemed crazy at first. I think Garrett Wilson seems crazy at first too, but I do think it's a possibility. And it might not be a possibility in the Jets' eyes, but I think the Steelers will call. I do think the Steelers will call. I'll also toss this out there, and there's not much conversation to have right now because we talked about it on Friday. Nothing has changed over the weekend. But I did talk to a source over the weekend who said that the Steelers are very much so still interested in Cooper Kupp and that trade is not dead yet. The words that I got, I answered the phone. I won't lie to you. I'll set the scene here. Dead asleep, dead asleep. You could, if for those of you who think that, this is a blast, it is. I love every second of it. I love the midnight phone calls, everything. My wife on the other end, not the greatest fan of them. Mm-hmm. So I get a phone call, dead asleep, middle of the night. And I answer the phone and I was like, hey, what's going on? And they ask me a couple of questions. They're talking and they go, just want to let you know that the Cooper Kupp trade is not dead. It's still very much so alive. I said, all right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hung up the phone. I looked at my wife. I said, happy birthday. And then I went back to sleep. So for those of you who want to know how good of a husband I am, shaved a mustache, which I do appreciate everybody who gave some love on Instagram for Jillian. And then woke her up at 1 a.m. to talk about Cooper Kupp. So I think it's still very much so live. Where it'll go, we'll see.